It's a happy weekend for Superman right now, as somehow James Gunn has found legs for his DC debut. It looks like Superman has more than a few excited people returning for weekend number 2. We'll show you the latest numbers right now. Folks, it's a dandy of a day, and thank you for coming our way. We're streaming to you from a studio in somewhere sunny USA and bringing you yet another video of excellence, breaking down entertainment and putting it back together better than ever. That is what we do. Folks, click the like button, share, and subscribe, and let's dive into Superman Part 2. Well, it turns out that Superman 2025 just might have legs. This is out of Variety. It says, box office, Superman aims for a $55 million or more. In the second weekend, it's by Rebecca Rubin, and consider me a little bit surprised on this one. The A- cinema score did not say to me that it was going to perform exceedingly well. I mean, I thought it was going to do fine in the second weekend, but this is better than fine. Superman will loom large again at the box office as two major newcomers, a Smurfs musical, and the latest I Know What You Did Last Summer open in theaters. One of those, by the way, is a horror movie. It's Smurfs. After a mighty $125 million domestic start, Superman is aiming to collect $55 million to $62 million in its second week of release, a standard 50 to 55% drop. Now, they call it a standard, and I don't know why the trades continue to just, they love them some Marvel, and anything to do with James Gunn and Superman right now, they want it to go down. I have my theories that it has to do with Zaslav. I think a superhero drop of 50 to 55% in the second weekend right now, pretty darn good. These things have been dropping in the 60s and even in the 70s, so listen, 50 to 55 is a winner. So far, the film has earned $155 million domestically and $250 million globally. Solid reviews and positive word of mouth should help the comic book adventure stick around during the competitive summer movie season, but Superman requires some serious box office staying power to qualify as a true blockbuster. Well, let's add this up, folks. So if the movie makes, let's land it in the middle for easy math, right at 60. So it says 55 to 62. Let's say 60 for ease. If it makes 60 and if it continues to have about a 1-to-1 domestic and international, the international I know is lagging slightly behind. We talked about that and done videos on it. I'm with you. But again, let's do the easy math, right? Let's say that it's, here, we'll do 60-40. That's easy. Should make about $100 million on the second weekend. And $100 million on the second weekend gets it to $350 globally. Now, after 2 weeks, well, actually after a week and a half, being at 350 would not be terrible. You would imagine it would cross 400 by the end of its second week of release. And being there at 400, I can now see this thing getting up towards 700. And 700, I think, is the magic number it needs to make, not only financially to break even, but also from a PR optical standpoint. It says that's because there's more riding on Superman than just earning back the film's mega $225 million production budget. The superhero reboot starring David Cornsweet as the Man of Steel and Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane has aspirations to reset the DC universe. It doesn't have aspirations, it did. For good or bad, whether it succeeds or does not, it reset it. Goes on to talk about what Superman is. Goes on to talk about, Smurfs. We're not going to do that. We're not going to talk about Smurfs. But anyway, I think this is doing better in the second weekend than I was perceiving it would. I thought maybe low 50, maybe 48 million, somewhere around there. So I think this is actually a win for James Gunn ahead of Fantastic Four. Vash, what do you say? Is this a win for DC maybe?
Yeah, I do think, though, that the box office numbers related to this kind of second week and these kind of legs right here are pretty loaded for PLFs. I think people are trying to get into these larger format screens in order to try to see this thing on the biggest screens they can possible, because I think everybody knows, like, once Fantastic Four actually comes out, it's over. You can't really see it in a...
Maybe we get that 60% drop in weekend 3 then because of Fantastic Four taking the premiums.
And that's what I was just going to say. I think because everybody is trying to see this in these premium and large format screens, I think it is going to drop off when Fantastic Four actually comes in. So yeah, second week, I think it's predictable that it was going to do a much better, given that it was a comic book movie and everything else from some of your other fare, and given that it had 2 weeks to really absorb those IMAX screens and Dolby theater screens and 40X screens and so forth, that it was gonna do all right. But man, after that, I just can't see this sustaining, and that's really, really unfortunate. It says something about the entire industry right there. My question is, what is it going to do internationally in these subsequent weeks right here? Because it really does need an international push, and we simply just haven't been seeing that.
Okay, now wait a minute. I've got something here. I'm chewing on in my mind. So
Please.
if this thing makes 400 million by the end of week 2 globally, and we think it's going to have a big time drop after that, maybe it'll stick around for a while, but it's still going to have a big time drop. It probably lands somewhere between $600 and $700 million, right? That fair? Which means it's basically a break-even movie at the box office.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm chewing on. If we combine Superman and Fantastic Four at the end of their runs, they're going to combine together, these big movies. They're going to come under a significant number of other superhero films that have come out in the last decade, combined together. Is that fair?
Yeah. I think it is very fair, and that tells you the kind of both the state of the industry, the state of DC, and so forth, and what kind of momentum that this film can actually generate on its own. I know the equation's different, right? We can't just necessarily look at this film in isolation and say, well, whether or not this was profitable or not profitable. We understand that the MCU and some of the Disney fare right there. Profitability is a much different equation, right? Especially with those high budgets. But we know that this is to launch things upcoming. I don't know if that's accomplished that goal. And like you said, bro, when you look at the superhero films of the past, right? When this thing was at its apex, when everybody couldn't get enough superhero films, those numbers just looked very, very differently. And I think this just reflects a post, superhero apex world.
All right, so although I think this is good news for Superman, and I don't want to be negative, I think this is good news because we were worried that it was going to flop. And now I think it's going to hit break even. That doesn't make investors happy, I don't think. I think they want way more than that. But just to give people an idea of where we are with superheroes, here are the 9 films that we currently believe have a bigger box office than both Superman 2025 and Fantastic Four combined together will have, okay? Avengers Endgame, which is maybe close to tripling it. Avengers Infinity War, Spider-Man No Way Home, The Avengers Age of Ultron, Black Panther, Deadpool and Wolverine, The Incredibles 2, and Iron Man 3. Iron Man 3 all the way back from 2013. These movies probably will end up having more solo than both Superman and Fantastic Four combined together in the summer of 2025. And to me, that says where we are with the superhero genre. I think that barring a miracle with the next Avengers movies and barring a complete and total renaissance with the X-Men, this thing's done. You'll have some middling kind of movies with small budgets, kind of make you remember what it was, get a few people excited. Spider-Man will still be big, but this is going to be kind of like Westerns now. What do you guys think?
It's an interesting thing to think about what's going on with DC, and they're actually putting their expectations in line. I actually think that David Zaslav, based off of some of the figures that we've seen recently out of Ohio and Georgia, I'm starting to believe that this movie only cost 200 to 225 million to make.
Plus marketing gets it to about 350-ish.
Right,
and it's only 100, but 350-ish, so it needs to make 700, right?
Right, well, and they're overspending a little bit on the marketing, more than a little bit on the marketing, in order to try to say, hey, this is the launch of this is our first foot into this, other than Creature Commandos that no one is really going to watch. But they are trying to launch a cinematic universe, but at the same time, they're not breaking the bank to try to make it into a $400 million film, the way that Disney is apparently doing with all of their movies, that they're willing to get closer and closer to $500 million, maybe over that in the case of Doomsday, in order for everything to be viewed as a success. DC is showing financial restraint, so it's not as big of a deal if it doesn't make that much money. I actually think that what DC is doing, despite the controversy around this film in particular, what they're doing is the right call, making movies that can be less than whatever they view as perfect. Because we all know that when Disney tries to make the perfect movie because they're worried about a test screening, they never turn out as good movies. Snow White costing $400 million or something at this point. That was a horrible movie.
Yeah. And Keri, what we're looking at, I guess, going beyond Superman and looking at Marvel, what I'm seeing is that I think kids, like we've broken that generational cycle now where the kids get excited about the superheroes and then they watch them for the next 2 decades. And then you kind of, move out of that phase, maybe. Some people don't. But I kind of think that they, just like with Star Wars, kids aren't watching this stuff as much anymore. Like they're doing Minecraft. They're doing these other things. They're into the Nintendo stuff. I kind of think superheroes are dated now. I think it's become a fad that we're looking back on, like the little fidget spinners. It just lasted a lot longer than the fidget spinners and made a lot more money.
I think you could be right. Also, I think have they maybe focused too much on the adult audience?
Yeah,
rather than on children, because I mean, like I said, I went as an everyman. I don't see a lot of these, but I went to see Iron Man, and it was mostly adults. I remember there was one kid near us, and we were annoyed because we were those kind of leftists at the time. But it was mostly adults, and so I don't think they've been trying to capture the kid audience. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. You said something interesting. You said you think the Superman movie or the superhero movies might go the way of Westerns. Well, maybe there'll be a renaissance then for superhero content in television, because that seems to be what's happened with Westerns. Is Westerns are very popular on TV.
Absolutely. I mean, Yellowstone's popular, and occasionally you get a True Grit at the box office that does well, but it's sporadic at best. And I think that could be Superman, or, it could be Superman, Spider-Man. Every once in a while you get an X-Men. But the era of getting 3 and 4 of these a year and them having $300 million budgets behind them, I don't think it's sustainable anymore.
I don't think it at all is, and I think the studios are finding it out pretty quickly, and I'm sure Disney's going to find it in a really hard way if Doomsday does not perform, because we know that film is going to be unbelievably expensive. But
likely the most expensive movie ever made.
Yeah, exactly. And so if that doesn't perform, oh man, that's.
And then they got at least another. Then they got at least another film that they have to release based on that, which will also be one of the most expensive movies ever made. So it's like a Snow White trilogy.
It's probably why we hear about conflict right between Kevin Feige and Bob Iger at this point, because I think Bob Iger realizes there's a lot on the line for the MCU going forward, especially with the amount that they're investing. But unlike Westerns, you see the Westerns work in TV because the budgets are relatively cheap. When you start to get into superhero fare now, it starts to get a little bit more expensive. So I am hopeful that superhero films and the kind of films that people want to actually see will make their way in other medium. I just don't know how they'll actually go about that. But I do think we're living in kind of a post, the kind of the lower end of comic book movies. I mean, it's just they just simply don't have the appeal that they once had. And here's the thing, you talk about the adults, right, and how they're catering to adults. Yeah, they're not catering to kids because kids aren't necessarily into these franchises. It's their parents' franchise. It's not necessarily their franchises. And I think Hollywood overall has been unwilling or unable to appeal to that demographic. We saw that a little bit with Minecraft, but on the whole, not so much. And I think that might doom the entire industry eventually, but it's certainly dooming comic movies now.
And yet, culture, it looks like Superman is going to get to a break even. Is that enough to keep James Gunn and DC? I mean, are they happy with even? Maybe they drop the budget amounts going forward and live with what they have?
Well, actually, they already dropped the budget amounts. The reason they went with relatively unknown actors outside of television was for that very reason. They paid them each under $1 million, except for Nathan Fillion, who's the only one who has, got a track record when it comes to things. So, I think they are already on the right track there. They yielded $170 million from their partnerships for this film, so they were able to spend more. It was it was kind of an interesting discovery for a lot of people, exactly, how they got away with a lot of this. Hollywood Reporter, Variety have been reporting a battery of numbers, some accurate, some not. But if you're looking at $170 million savings from $363 million in total spend, I mean, you're already on the right road to break even, and that's all that's needed to do. If you take a real look at this from, step back from it a ways and look at the bigger picture, no superhero franchise and no franchise based on these characters started off with enormous earnings. It was the first step in what was going to be a future that they would just build on each film. They would build new characters. They would introduce us to a team. Gunn's following the same pathway as the MCU, but maybe with a little bit more discipline, I would say. There was still a lot of Gunnisms and things like that in the film, but overall, and I think Keri's right, they're trying to avoid the same missteps of focusing on an adult audience that MCU seemed to have done from day one. They're right. I mean, their gut's right that you're not going to appeal as much to children, especially under the old DC formula, because the old DC formula was built on a very dark and dystopian version of the world. Thank you, Zack Snyder. But this didn't look like that. This was shiny and bright, and most of the things that we heard were accurate. Most of the things we were shown were misleading, and that gave us some real problems. And look, I'm not going to say that people I'm not going to say that people weren't, pointing out the darkness that is in this film, but you have good versus bad. So you're going to have, dark versus light. It's as simple as that. And I have to say, if anybody deserves praise aside from the actor that played Mr. Terrific, it's got to be Nicholas Hoult, who's on screen right there as Lex. He was genius. And this was his opportunity to shine, because it's going to create an opportunity for him in the future to be more of a leading man. I think this is his step to do that. Regardless, back to the money. I think that even breaking even on this is a step in the right direction, because guess what? There's going to be more, and it's just the beginning. Just consider this the first step, unlike the final steps that we're getting from Fantastic Four.
I just hope that Supergirl can step in a straight line when we get her finally next year. And that's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. We are done for now, but don't worry. Do not fret. Not yet, for more content is still coming your way 4 times a day right here on the Pro Channel. What a joy it has been to share our time with you. We hope you feel the same. Adding value to your every single day is our job here, and we take it very seriously. Folks, the only thing we ask in return is that you consider clicking that like button. Share, subscribe, click it, stick it to those algorithms. It's the notification bell. And drop a comment right on down below. And folks, if you'd like to subscribe to our partner YouTube channels, That Park Place, That Pod Place, That Game Place, and some of those radio stations like Vacation Radio, well, we certainly would appreciate it. Until the next time we have the honor of spending time and being invited into your day, folks, we go on our way saying this: keep learning, keep growing, and as always, keep having fun.
Jump into the water!
Why listen to music made by people and companies who really don't like you? Check out Vacation Radio today and prepare for all new content made by the people behind the WDW Pro Channel. It's the place you need for all the music. That should be fun.
Want it all, so I give them cannonball. Yeah!
Hundreds of songs, every genre you can imagine. Listen live on YouTube and enjoy a set list that's always sunny. It's Vacation Radio.
Arizona. Arizona. Pineapple pizza, Hawaiian ice freeze, yeah. Can't wait to be up. 3 days of you and me.
What are you waiting for? Every WDW Pro video has a link to Vacation Radio in the video description.
I just
Try it out and subscribe today.